perspective what value this system brings to people, so we can be very clear about why we're doing it and not get stuck in the how we're doing it, which is always a difficult conversation because it's very deep and complex. So we'll try and lay out some of those conversational layers in this talk. And yeah, that'll lead to some clarification of our overview doc and our presentation, and then that's the common stack.
So you want to do it more actually user stories, co-creation workshop than actually an AMA?
I want to make it kind of a directed AMA. Please ask all your questions. I want the questions to go in the appropriate segment so that we know we don't get our lines crossed. Okay. We're talking about so much with this project. I feel like a lot of the miscommunication is people being told the how when they're asking the why. And I want to be clear about what segment these questions come in so that we can answer them, stay on point, and then, or answer in the correct flow of the presentation.
Perfect.
Love it.
I like it.
Let's just, before we
start,
start,
because I think there was, are we streaming?
Mm-hmm.
I don't see it, or I can't find it.
Oh, we are, but
That's important. I think there was also some confusion about who's taking notes on what part, so let's get make sure.
I find it.
I have one or two people on the FAQ.
Griff was on the FAQ, and who else?
Okay, that's cool. Griff on the FAQ. User stories. We got two.
But
Cool.
where's the document, or should I just create one?
He shared it to the Telegram.
I shared it in the Telegram.
Okay.
And don't worry about the last two links for now. Everybody else, feel free to take notes. Anything that pops out at you. What I'm trying to do a lot is visualize these things, because when we put it in text, how a bonding curve works, it's quite a mental gymnastics, as I'm sure a lot of you guys know. So trying to visualize these things, if you're pen and paper, feel free to sketch. Be creative, be lunar with it. I'm trying to describe this system in visuals, so if anything comes to mind, feel free to sketch it out or suggest it. And ultimately, this could turn into multiple breakout sections on the details of each of these components, but I'll try to keep it fairly high level and make sure everyone gets their questions answered in this session. Cool?
I still can't find the user stories.
Would you be able to share that?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody ready to begin? So, the common stack. What is it? Who uses it? And why? So, I think the best way to kind of get into this is to have a user story. Can we have a volunteer, someone who is a part of a community that, Danny, how about it? Okay, so Danny belongs to a community that is passionate about beach cleanups. There's garbage all over the beach and nobody's doing anything about it, and this community came together and said, hey, we see a problem and we want to solve it. So they organized, sorry, I just need to...
Oh yeah, I wasn't sure if you want me to draw, right? Or just be a volunteer.
Actually, yeah, why don't you draw Danny and her community.
Okay.
Oh.
And they have a community goal. Their goal is to clean up trash, and they have projects which they hope to achieve that goal with. So Danny has her community, they've got a goal, and now they have a list of things that they want to do. So Danny, as a member of this, or isn't even a member of this community yet, she has heard of this community. Now, she has multiple ways to engage with this community. How we engage with this community today is we donate. So Danny says, hey, trash cleanup is important. If I give $10, then they'll be able to take that $10 and clean a beach. Great, I'm gonna donate them money. So this is the Giveth DApp where it is right now. This is 1.0. We are connecting donors with changemakers directly. 100% of the donation transparently arrives at the changemaker's address with which they can clean up trash.
So here's Danny over here. She's the user.
Oh,
She hasn't joined this community yet, but she gives dye to it, right?
Right,
And
so
then it's
she's
gonna go from
donating
here.
to this cause, yeah.
Right?
No overhead through charity, no transmission fees, all the wonderful things that the Giveth DApp delivers. So this is where the Giveth DApp is today, and it's also a way that you can interact with the Common Stack. You can just directly donate to this community if you want. But with the Common Stack, we're kind of building additional functionality onto Giveth. So now Alice, after she's donated the money, she saw that it cleaned up a beach, she's really happy about it, and then she says, hey, I want to get involved with this community. I want to participate as a member in this community. So now, Danny, through the Common Stack infrastructure, has the ability to purchase tokens of this community, membership tokens. So she can put in that another $10 and receive 10 Trash Hero coin. And that Trash Hero coin is a governance token, so she can cast her vote on which proposals she thinks should pass. Maybe she wants to suggest some proposals, and now that she's a member in this community, she can suggest proposals. She can vote to have her neighborhood cleaned up, for example. That may be especially valuable to her. With those tokens, she also has a stake in the community. So as more work is done in this community and more people are interested in cleaning up trash and purchase, the value in that economy grows. So what was initially a donation or we don't want to call it an investment, but the value of your membership can grow if the value in that economy grows. So if you are, there's kind of a positive feedback cycle here. If you are finding the most productive, beneficial communities to join, as they complete their goals, more people join, become more valuable. So you're basically bootstrapping the value of the network and potentially making a profit on your membership. And we want to avoid words like investment, we want to avoid words like profit, because we're moving away from that paradigm. We're building sustainable, collaborative commons, essentially, not for profit.
Wait, so are we
Yeah.
are we asking questions throughout all of this?
Feel free.
Or
Do you have a question?
yeah, okay, so besides like the intention that's in our brains, what separates this from that paradigm? Because you're saying we don't want to use words like investment, whatever, because we're moving out of that old paradigm, but like, yeah, I can see like our spirits may not be there, but it sounds like
Cool.
there's like technically a way that it is distinct from that.
Good question. So with these systems, we are not looking at like venture scale returns. The issue with a lot of our legacy systems is external investment requires a disproportionate reward. Like VCs get a big chunk of the pie, and that value is extracted. There's all sorts of value extraction in our current systems. We are trying to build more sustainable economies where the value does not come in from external sources and leave to those external sources. We're trying to build more sustainable. So, I mean, we're looking at like 4x returns versus 10,000x returns. You know, we're not looking at that level of value production for investors. And I think it's important to separate our narrative from those words as well, because we are talking about membership and participation and not investment with the expectation of value extraction. I just want to make one more note. The bar we are comparing to is pure donations. So right now people lose 100% of the money that they give to charity. So all we have to do is give people back 10% of their money, 50% of their money, 100% of their money. If they make 120% and earn a profit on their membership, well done. But I mean, if you make 80% back, hey, you directly donated to cleaning up the beach and you got some of your money back. So it's a very low bar that we are currently like competing against.
Yeah, and I think that's the real big piece here. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, we are creating value networks because we're allowing these altruistic causes to actually have a value. Right now, altruistic causes don't have a value. There's no way to put it on a spreadsheet or anything, right? We're not trying to make returns. Our goal is to put value into networks that don't have a value currently.
Can I give you some help with wording? Like there is a generative value systems and like extractive value generation. Like that's the two.
Right.
So this
Josh,
is a
Josh is piggyback.
Generative versus extractive.
Josh wants to piggyback.
I've lost my train of thought. Forget it.
Okay. My bad, Josh.
Are there any big questions that I should put up here? Any questions that are unanswered that maybe we can come back to if people are feeling like there's, yeah.
I just have a quick question on that point that Griff made on the intrinsic value. Is the intrinsic value on the network is the intrinsic value, let's say in this case it's cleaning up the beach, the intrinsic value is that the beach being clean has more value than it being dirty or with garbage on it?
Thank you.
Sorry, so you're saying how is that defined?
Where is the value? So where is the
Okay.
intrinsic value? Could it be both? I think the network, you're trying to assign value to the network, but you're also possibly trying to assign value to say the beach is worth more being clean
Mhm.
than having
Can
garbage
I-
layered on
can I
it.
clear that? The actual value is in the governance of the network. Because you have, and that's where there's a value competition, right? Because you could create 10 commons for cleaning up the same beach. What makes one commons have more value than others? Well, so the people who care about the beach and want to put money into that network that have value in that clean beach, they believe the governance of that network is better than the other 10. Josh.
So it's measuring and codifying value. It's not that the beach doesn't have value, it's that we haven't measured or codified the value, and that's why there's no reciprocal exchange of the cleaning of the beach creates more value in the beach, but that flows to the user who's cleaned up the beach, so that because we've measured that value, we can now measure the increase of value, and the increase of value can be attributed. Is that
Well,
Well, I just want to say I don't want to lose Michael's piece. Like maybe what you said is more applicable to like more layman's, but like what Griff says, it's still like even though I've been working on this project for months, like it still is like this weird technical explanation that I'm like I don't really know. But that was really like spoke to me of like that we're creating value so that the beach is more valuable clean than it is valuable dirty. I don't know. I just thought that
I mean,
was
this comes down to how the community defines it as well, which is where these could be turned right on their head. There could be a community that values the beach dirty and sets their economy up to dirty the beach. This is also possible through this, so it does ultimately come down to how the community defines value. And we are essentially creating a marketplace for economies around causes to do anything, and then the power of that is the marketplace decides. So we're not just creating one trash commons, we're creating infrastructure for anyone to create a commons around anything, and then the market can decide which of those commons have the best governance. I could create a commons that says I'm in charge and I get 100% of the profits, but how many people do you think are going to stick around when someone forks that and says we split it all equally? So generally you have this market force, the invisible hand of the market, but it's allowing you to align with the communities and economies that treat you well and move away from the ones that don't.
I have a question, but for later. What's the next beach? In the sense, right now this beach is like a good example of the commons. What's the next good example to transmit?
So that's the piece that I think is important with what Griff said about the governance, because two different people clean two beaches, you have two clean beaches. Great. How do the people who are cleaning those beaches decide which team of people they're gonna go to the next beach and clean with? Well, how do you decide which beach to go clean next?
No, my question was not, maybe I didn't explain it well. I'm not talking about beaches, I'm not talking about examples of commons.
So, okay, I got you.
Before we move on,
Food,
like,
water, power, that kind of thing.
Infrastructure, I mean.
Yeah, well the beautiful thing is we're creating an infrastructure that allows emergent creation of whatever makes sense. So if people can use this infrastructure for almost any cause. So I mean, each of those has to be tailor-made and designed and, specified, built using, so when I get into how we're designing this system.
I'm asking precisely for that because, I mean, depending on the purpose of your community and the commons, I think that the design needs to be also very ad hoc because it will be very different. I mean, different contexts, different objectives,
Totally.
different people.
Totally.
So even if I realize that the aim is to build an example, I also realized that at the beginning you need to give a lot of efforts to customize, let's say, a specific example, maybe for making a generic platform for
100%. That's the next section. We'll be going into complex system design at a brief overview and talking about how complex and detailed that needs to be,
just following up on Michael's question and the answers. Like anybody like that clarifies me
please, but the way I understand it is that if you have two communities that do the same thing, like, I see the value on the proof, actually. I don't know if like the proof that they did is actually the value. So, for example, if they have cleaned 100 bitches and the other ones just have cleaned one,
Yeah.
you can see the value on the backlog, like on the history and the results that they got, which is actually, you know, so the proof is actually the value, and therefore that will create tokens. I mean,
Yep.
I don't know if that's like a
This is
revision.
one of the components of the common stack. We're getting a little specific into that right
Okay,
now. Yeah.
okay.
I'm just wondering if Danny is doing this, or do you want a timekeeper
I have an alarm set on my phone.
for like all of your markers, or because you seem like you had specific sections.
Yeah, we got 10 minutes left in this, and then we'll jump into the others. I think, actually, if you wouldn't mind giving me a shout out at each of these, so 30 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 10.
Okay, and what time did we start?
1:45.
Okay, so at 4:15 we moved to design principles. 4:25 we moved to the next.
Please and thank you.
Okay.
Can I just say, piggyback off of this?
Yeah.
So this is the challenge with altruistic causes, is that the value isn't easy to put into a number. So you may think that I wanna see impact, I wanna see results. Another person may think, well, it's all about the journey and like how did they get there and were they using ethical practices? Every individual gets to say what the value of that network is with their feet, right? And with their money. So it's like, you know what, I like Trash Hero coin more than, you know, Trash Pickup Beach coin, right? Because Trash Hero coin, they do it they show their impact and right? Or I like Trash Hero coin more than, you know, Save the Whale coin because I care more about trash. And so every individual who participates in these in the commons like systems, they get to attribute value where they are, and that's how we measure the qualitative value of the impact of these commons.
So not only on the results, but the vision that they have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you can't just put a number to these things. If we could, then we would have economies around them already. And that's,
To paraphrase, we're aligning action with belief through skin in the game mechanics.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So I think maybe some of this will bring some clarity to that as well. So these are the 4 components of the common stack, which we'll get into a little bit more. But what do they do? The bonding curve brings in funding for a community. So remember, Danny and her community, they need funding to get this done. Then they need, as someone brought up, to decide which beach is next. Okay, we clean that beach, well, which of the other beaches, or should we move to Nepal, or should we upgrade our governance process, or should we anything else that a community needs to decide on? We need a governance process, a way that we can collectively make reasonable decisions. Then we need a way to transfer that money, so proposals are accepted, well then a milestone is created in the Giveth DApp, so this is the Giveth DApp here, and that says, okay, when your milestones are complete, you can have the funds. And then we need some kind of reporting on that. So, Trash Hero Cleanup 1 versus Trash Hero Cleanup 2, which community is better? Well, you can look at, you know, number of proposals passed, number of kilograms of trash cleaned up, number of funds pushed through the economy. You can see, it will basically order, you know, if you have Trash Hero Commons 2, Trash Hero Commons 1, you know, and this is the market cap of this one, and this one is, so you kind of get this list of value in each of these economies so that you can choose the one that you want to be involved in. So it's basically an ordered list, you know, by value in that economy. So that kind of helps. I kind of lost my train of thought there. So, any final questions? Or yeah, I guess we still have a few minutes on the overview, hey?
So it's proposals, then ordered list. Sorry, I got money, governance proposals.
So
proposals are not part of governance. I kind of see
This
them
is
as the
bonding
same thing.
curve, this is conviction voting, this is the Giveth DApp, and this is the analytics dashboard.
Okay.
And where you put your time and effort is in which bonding curve you want to invest in.
Okay, so the bonding curve is essentially the, I'll get it a little bit into the biomimetic design. So we're treating these systems like organisms, sort of thing. So we want to, the token bonding curve is kind of like the cell membrane. So you are in the cell, you are operating within that local economy, or you are outside the cell, you are operating outside of that local economy, be it fiat or another cryptocurrency. So the bonding curve is basically that permeable membrane. So when you buy into a bonding curve or sell from a bonding curve, you're basically getting tokens that allow you to interact within that specific economy. So the bonding curve is that outside barrier on the economy. Then once you get in the economy, all the work done, so when you are participating in conviction voting, so that's your casting a preference, continuous voting for all these proposals. So you're in the Trash Hero community, you have 10 beaches on the list, and you can say, well, I think it should be this one, and none of the rest. And your preference is continually broadcast from everyone in the community and aggregated into basically a social conviction score. And if that hits certain criteria, like amount of conviction, amount of time above that conviction, amount of funds requested. I mean, if it's trying to take all the money, it would take a lot more conviction than someone just asking for $10 or $20. So that's how proposals basically get passed. It's like a neuron firing. And think of it like an action potential in a neuron, and neurons form our thoughts. If anybody does brain stuff, very interesting. But basically, it turns a continuous preference broadcast into discrete action items, and proposals can start and go through the process. Once proposals are approved, funds are allocated by the Giveth DApp. And the typical milestone process, we're all pretty familiar with that. As milestones are achieved, funds are sent out. And then you have our analytics who can inform Danny and the other members of the community how many proposals are being accepted, being proposed, being completed, how much trash is being cleaned. And then that's a signal to members / investors, because now this is like a well-performing startup. This is like investing in Microsoft when they're putting out good numbers. Because this community is creating really big value by cleaning up these beaches. And look at the value that's coming out of these. More people are going to want to buy in to provide more funds for this community to do more work. And the value in the community increases as more people join. So your initial membership purchase is now potentially worth more than it was initially. Okay. I think I jumped all over the place there a little bit. So, any questions about biomimetic design, how we're kind of, I mean, we can go down the rabbit hole with this. I'm trying to keep it as high level as possible because there are multiple kind of, each component can kind of have its own biomimetic analogy, which I would love to get into in further breakout sessions. I don't think we need to get into that level of detail right now.
Maybe a request to, for how to talk about it. Maybe in terms of the user experience again, like how does this aspect of it, because I mean when we're talking about a self-contained economy, these are still people who are members of these communities that are very much rooted in the real world and are still interacting in state-issued currency in a lot of cases, right? Like this isn't like you're going all in on the crypto as a lifestyle per se. So like
all in on the crypto.
So how and I mean I'm just sort of like, this is like a prompt because I know you have the answer. I'm just like encouraging you to express it in terms of like how does a user experience that? How does
how does a user experience
being inside this self-contained economy when at the same time they're still very much connected to all the things that our friends and family who are completely outside this space do,
So this economic system doesn't preclude any other economic system. So you can be involved in the fiat world. This is just taking a community. We all belong to communities. We have gamer communities, skateboard communities, climbing communities, online communities, work communities. We are now just basically enabling the ability to strap an economy onto that and a decision-making process that we're hoping is effective. It hasn't been built yet, it hasn't been tried yet. We're still, even in leading-edge blockchain projects, we're still voting with legacy voting systems. Okay, everybody show up on Wednesday and hit yes or no. And we're finding a lot of things, like people don't show up, and people don't know what all these things are that they're voting yes or no to. We have all sorts of issues with that. So this is why we're experimenting with this novel governance process, conviction voting, where we are hoping to aggregate that social opinion using things like liquid democracy, liquid pledging, basically, having the amount of time that you've staked in the community, the amount of reputation you have in the community, the amount of expertise you have in the community, the amount of trust you have in the community, giving you more say in a continuous preference broadcast. Imagine if we were all, deciding on dinner. And like, okay, everyone gets to decide on dinner, but the longer you've been a part of Giveth, the more, your more weight your vote has. Also, the longer you can keep that preference as one, sorry, I kind of got talking future box stuff there.
It's okay.
We're not doing liquid pledging at the moment. Future box, I just get excited about it. But the longer you hold your preference, the more weight that preference has. So as you, dinner's a bad example because it's only in a few
But
hours.
what if it's dinner every day, every week, right? Like, so you say, hey, I want Italian, but no one wants Italian. But your preference, maybe you don't get the first night, second night, third night, fourth night, but eventually, if you're holding your preference for Italian food long enough, you will have more weight because you haven't been heard, so you should have more weight. And then the people who are getting their vegan food all the time, eventually you'll be able to stack up to them as so that you don't have this tyranny of the majority, right?
What if your idea is just bad for the purposes, bad for the community, and then is it possible that someone could accumulate enough value to a destructive idea by just being there and being consistent for a long time?
We have that in our current system.
Yeah, and I want to say that because people are, it takes time, everyone can see that it's building up. So if they think that, so what is the community, right? This person with the bad idea, they are a member of the community. And so they think it's a good idea. And everyone else can see that it's building up power. And they can be like, you know what, that thing looks like it might actually pass. I'm out of here. They have time to exit if they believe this is bad for the community. So it's really because of this continuous signaling of preferences and the time and the adding the time component into it gives people who care about that community the awareness, the opportunity to vote with their feet.
It's about time to transition to design principles.
Okay, cool. I feel like I already kind of dipped toes in there. But this has been really good, really productive. Lots of good questions and clarity so far. Okay, so ultimately, what we're talking about here is what every blockchain project, or some of them are just working on specific components, but this is the same problem that a lot of people are trying to solve. So what makes the Commons Stack different is the way we're going about the system design. And we have chanced upon or been lucky enough to work with groups like Block Science and give us incredibly connected network in the crypto space. Because essentially this is a massive project and it is an incredibly complex system. Each application of this will be very diverse. There's my alarm. And it requires some very complex modeling. So we do incredible things as a species. We've sent space shuttles into space, we build massive bridges that span huge distances, and we do this through proper engineering, so iterative engineering design. We model it, we simulate it, we put in all of the assumptions that we can, and we test those assumptions, then we build it small, then we build it bigger. In the crypto space right now, we're engaging in very complex system design, and we're basically shooting from the hip. We are developers who have an idea and start coding, and then when it gets out there to the world with all the craziness and chaos that happens in an economy in the real world, they struggle. No wonder. So what we're trying to do is introduce iterative engineering practices that are being, there's tons of real world academic knowledge out there around building these systems, but those academics don't know much about crypto, and the crypto world doesn't know much about those academics. One guy is kind of standing in the middle on this bridge, Michael Zargham, and he has decades of research in multi-agent coordination systems, behavioral economics, and all sorts of other complex system design that could be used by the crypto space, but we don't have the tooling available. So he's basically been taking the past year building up that tooling and building out these processes of deriving. So we've talked a few times about mathematical first principles, and some people were not sure, and I'm not sure that we should even be talking about this, but I want to put it out here so you guys can help me like narrow this, hone this message and pitch. So he's basically defining economic conservation principles. So when he looks at these systems, he's saying, okay, there's some conservation between reserve and supply within the token bonding curve that will not be broken. Once you define, yeah.
Sorry, because maybe I was distracted for a second. Conservation principle. Is there another word? What is the conservation principle and so on?
How about I put this here? So the economic conservation.
Can I just jump in?
Yeah.
So the conservation, like when you're doing like mass conservation, energy conservation, these are laws of physics that you know are going to be maintained. And if we apply that same idea, that same technology to our designs that is applied in general engineering, then we can use the same kind of processes and procedures that are used for making those designs. So we can say, guess what, the token bonding curve is going to maintain a ratio between the supply and reserve. And that's a law. It might as well be like gravity, you know, and we can start putting in these conservation laws and start interacting with them in ways that we do all the time when we're building complex systems.
So it's indeed like physics. It's like conserving the energy. You have an input, and from the output you want to like lose the least amount of energy possible. Actually, right?
Token physics.
Yeah.
Right.
Straight
Token
up the term.
physics. Yeah.
So we have, you know, in building design, force equals mass times acceleration. From that core conservation, you can derive complex mathematics that makes sure that when you build a skyscraper 100 stories, it's still gonna stand up because we are able to simulate all the forces, because all of it comes down to this core conservation. This happens in electronics, V equals IR, you know, anything we build in the real world. But we've never been able to design economies because we've never had conservation principles, because it's just all chaotic. And this is a cool thing about this kind of design, is it's not deterministic. It's not saying this is how, it's not predictive, but it's saying within the rules of this economy, in this cell that we've created, that is the token bonding curve is the cell boundary. Within this cell, these are the rules of the economy. And you have to follow by those rules because it's a programmatic economy. It's different from our real world economies. And therefore we can basically say these are more robust, more stable. We can't say they're stable because anything could happen, but of course this is why the iterative design process is really important, because as we learn in the real world how things break down, we can add those things to the model and build a better model to simulate a better system, so that we are basically coming out with as close to the real world in these simulations as possible. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is actually that conservation principle is one of your biggest USPs when it comes to like, because it's economies. And to get the attention of the economic world in a way, the fact that everything follows law of nature, the things that really function that we see around us, all of the things are doing this, except for economy right now. But with this, economy could start following these principles as well. So this has never been done.
What did you call it? A USP?
Unique selling proposition.
Oh.
And will be that
Marketing term.
there could be some entropy in that economic.
There is, yes, and we can also, so I mean, this is another rabbit hole we can dive into. We are introducing different forces in these, so a lot of these forces are being, so when we look at modeling these economies with a secondary market, for example, because you could buy trash hero coins on any exchange. If I bought them from the bonding curve and wanted to sell them, who's gonna stop me? So you will have secondary markets for these things, but secondary markets can be basically modeled like magnetic forces, because you have a bonding curve with a predetermined price structure, and your secondary markets through arbitrage would fluctuate somewhere around that. So you can model all of these things as like magnetism, or using like So similar, yeah, we're using like the same math from capacitors, from magnetism, from, like, it's really cool. We're basically turning a lot of this into electrical engineering, and yeah.
Just a question, in terms of who will buy the coin, do you have any sense of who would be the buyers? Do you suspect that most of the buyers would be people that, say, believe in the cause versus, let's say, like what's happening today? It's like people are investing in any coin either because they think it's cool or because they're trying to make money off of it, let's say. So do you have a guesstimate of like what's the ratio of people that just want to make money, versus people that believe in the cause, or is it just untested?
It depends what time scale we're talking. If we're talking like long term enough, we are still so in the technical weeds with all of this.
Yeah.
Real users shouldn't see any of this. Real community members shouldn't be like, we want this to be easy, user friendly, but for the time being, it's probably going to be very much the same audience as the typical crypto.
Just to dive into that, there are two sections of starting this of the economy. There's what we call the hatch phase, and then the open phase. In the hatch phase, only people who believe in the cause and who should be considered experts of like either the system itself or like the underlying cause. If you really want to do this commons and you really want to be attractive, you really want to make sure that you only allow experts that can make good decisions join. Because during that hash phase in the token bonding curve, you get a disproportionate amount of tokens to what you contribute. So there is a huge opportunity for profits. And so you need to be really careful that you are getting people who will make good decisions for the commons, because the real input, the real income of the commons is the people who are already donating, right? The people who are like, hey, I want to see a clean beach, and I have extra money, I want to give it to somebody, to do this beach. Well, we have a very huge competitive advantage here because they can actually buy this token, retain an asset of value, and then, send their money to a place. However, they're participating in a system where they have less governance power than the people who start it. So you kind of start with a closed system, and you only let in people who you believe are aligned with the cause, and then you let anyone jump in afterwards. Yeah?
I was going to say that it might be helpful to think of it as input and output. So a token is not just a token, it's not a DAI, it's not a dollar. Like, it can be loads of things. It's a digital object. It's a scarce digital object. So anything in code can be represented. So it can be any form of currency, if you will.
Yeah, and it represents membership. Did you have
a question as well?
I did, yeah, I just, what you were saying, Griff, makes me think, like, how do we do that without corruption? Because, like, having some governing body that's allowed to say, oh, you have an opinion that is considered, like, expert towards the direction this should be going in. I mean, it just sounds like dangerous that those are the only people who would be able to participate in the guiding phase.
If you're seen as corrupt, more people won't come in afterwards, and you will lose money. So
we're not making any assumptions about how people are going to use these systems.
Right.
They can use them for good, they can use them for evil, and the market decides.
It's not the problem you're trying to solve.
Right.
In the end, the people who get to buy in early, a large portion of their funds goes straight to the cause as a donation. So if they're seen as corrupt or unfair or whatever, and the overall ecosystem that the commons lives within is like, yeah, you guys suck, they're going to lose money. All they can do then with that money is a portion of their funds is donated to other people. So they'll be shit out of luck.
They won't hatch. They won't get past the hatching phase, probably.
Well, it would hatch. Right? This is the thing. Like, if you do a corrupt hatch, you'll hatch, but then no one would buy tokens afterwards. Mm-hmm. So then you just donated, let's say, 30% of the funds to this DAO. That the only thing the DAO can do is spend money on something in that cause.
Yeah.
and then these other people, then you have these tokens that have, 70% of the value back in them that you put in. So you just lost 30%. So you're economically incentivizing people to be honest.
Did you have something, Danny?
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback on something Joshua was saying, so, or Josh, sorry. So going into the token bonding curve is currency. So we're talking about it can be any kind of currency. Can it be trees? Can it be energy? I mean, can you put different things into the commons for stewardship and receive tokens for something other than?
We're still
Currency.
so early in this, but you could have multi-collateralized curves. Yes, this is something Aragon's been looking at. And you could because if we're creating, one token bonding curve, we also have to consider there will be a million other token bonding curves, and each of these will be communities prioritizing different values. So one may gain more value as trash is cleaned up, one may gain more value as trees are planted, one may gain more value and all of these will be liquid between each other. So ultimately we are enabling communities to program value into their economies, and we don't think you should program everything under one economy. I think when in our current economies you have a housing bubble and a manufacturing slump, and you only have one currency that you're trying to rectify these two things. But if you can have an economy geared towards a specific goal and liquidity between other economies that are prioritizing specific goals,
Right.
then you can have a multi-valued network. That's much more viable systems model.
And putting trees into a bonding curve, that gets into the layer of how do you tokenize physical assets, which that's just out of scope.
Okay.
We don't know how to do that
Yeah.
yet.
Cool. I think we've already gone through some of these system components, but maybe I'll just walk through them once more. So the bonding curve, again, is how you get into the economy. It's when you buy or sell, most of your money goes into a collateral pool. Some of your money might go into the funding pool, depending on, this is all how the system is set up by the community. Now you hold tokens, you can participate in governance. Conviction voting, or you can participate in proposals. If you see a cleanup near you, you could go and clean up the beach and receive Trash Hero coin for your time and effort. So you can participate in physically in the commons or via governance. Again, you can propose proposals. You can say, hey, I'm in the tree planting economy. I'm going to plant 1,000 trees in my backyard. Can I have $1,000? Everyone votes through conviction voting. Yes, it's approved. You get your money sent to you by the Giveth DApp, and then you go and plant your trees. There's a verifier process, reviewer process like we have in Giveth currently, and the stats are logged and come out to all the members of your community through the Commons Analytics dashboard.
I had one question regarding maybe all this that you just said, and also the reviewing process of the investors. I remember that part there was mentioned that every single time there's a review process for all the investors. So there's a phase when everybody has to vote in a certain aspect of things. So for example, if the community wants to make a change towards something, the investors actually have to review that, or is that not a thing?
So we aren't separating members and investors in this.
Okay, I'm sorry,
When
members,
you are a member, you buy community tokens, you're now a member, but you're not an outside investor, you're now part of the community.
Yeah,
So you're asking about how,
yeah, the members' interaction with basically the community. Like if you're a member, because I remember that portion, but I'm not sure if this is included in this probably, but the interaction from members with the community.
members are the community.
Okay, well, but someone has to make a decision, right? For evolution of a community, they might want to go to Africa and plant trees over there, and the other group might want to go to Italy. So who ends up making that decision?
That's conviction voting. So basically it's put out
Okay,
as
so that's
proposals.
maybe what
So if you say, hey, I think we should go to Africa, we have all bought into this community, we are the community.
The
You
members.
say, yeah. You
Okay,
say, I
yeah.
think we should go plant trees in Africa, you put it out as a proposal, saying, hey, here is this proposal that we should go to Africa, we should plant trees, and everybody sees it on their list and casts their preference. And if it's a great idea and you've thought it through and you've put together a good plan and your funding looks like it makes sense and it's gonna be high impact, then chances are you'll pass if it's a good one. We're hoping that's how it works anyway. If you ask for $10 million to do it, it probably would not gain enough conviction to pass. So this is like the mechanism by which the community makes
And it has
decisions.
a timeout, right? Like if somebody doesn't vote, like they
It's continuous voting, so it's very different from voting systems today. There is no like, the vote is on Wednesday until Saturday. It's just a continuous, all proposals are on the table.
Okay,
And
they don't
you can
expire?
allocate, so you can think of it like buckets. So these are all the proposals and you're a faucet.
Yeah.
So this is proposal 1, this is proposal 2, and this is proposal 3. So you can say, okay, I want 50% of my stream to flow into bucket 1, and I want 25% to flow into bucket 2, and I want none to flow into bucket 3. So now your conviction is filling this bucket up. It's not a vote like, hey, I vote and therefore 100 tokens go in. It's all according to flows, and this comes back to the biomimetic design. Let me find a better pen here. So this fills up as you keep your faucet over this preference. If you move your faucet to another preference, this slowly drains, like there's a little hole in the bottom. So you can't just move 100 tokens into a vote and 100 tokens out of a vote, because that causes last minute vote swings and volatility and other bad things in the system. So basically you can consider your opinion like a faucet, and you can allocate that faucet to as many different preferences in whatever percentage you want. And that might be, let's go to Africa, and that might be, let's throw $1 million party, so you can choose which things are important to you as a member in that community. The more tokens you have, the more stake you have, the more say you have. The more time your preference stays as is, the more weight it has. So you have kind of this, these positive feedback loops of encouraging community participation.
Okay, so just like I think like question, like what happens to the stake? Like is it the stake thing kind of thing? Like what happens to
your tokens, you hold your tokens, so you don't spend them.
Oh, okay, so
You
they're
hold them.
just assigned to
Yeah.
They're
If you-
asserted, is the
you-
term
if-
we're using.
Yeah, if you have 1,000 tokens and you start voting, you will always have 1,000 tokens. It's just that they're asserting that your preferences.
Oh, okay.
They're still your tokens, you can still sell them, you can still buy more. It's basically just saying, like, you're telling the logic 50%, 25%, if your tokens aren't staked and locked, you can buy and sell into the token bonding curve at any time, and your preference as a percentage of your token holdings will be allocated like that.
Yeah, and we're hoping to do some cool stuff with the implementation there, so that it actually doesn't end up as 75%. It ends up as 100% the entire time. It's very important that we fight voter apathy.
100, sorry.
That we can make it easy for people to get more tokens, and whatever they were already voting on, those go right there so if they buy more tokens, they have more voting power for it right away. And if they sell their tokens, they have less, and they don't have to worry about, oh, I voted, or I'm voting, so I can't sell my tokens. No, they can sell their tokens right away.
Yeah,
So,
That's great.
if somebody, say, has their vote set up like this, 50, 25, 25, and they buy more tokens, it's just that their 50% and their 25% grow by the proportion it's not like, not that they have new tokens, they just put those on the vote, it's just like, right.
Exactly. That's very important for user experience, right? You can vote once a month, and even if a couple of proposals pass, it's reallocating your preferences so that, if that 50% passes, then it's 50-50 on the other two.
So it's
Right.
just automatically like waterfalls
Nice.
into.
And then the only thing that can happen to not be voting is if all 3 of those pass, and then all of a sudden you won't be voting on anything.
You
So
start
it's
getting emails and push notifications and.
Yeah. You would be getting notifications just like the DApp notifies you right now when your donation goes somewhere. The DApp would notify someone when their proposal passes, right? And then when we might add extra notifications for when none of their tokens are being voted on. Because this is, especially for the people who are in the hatch sale, we'll know who they are. Is like, or at least we'll have a list of people, and we'll have a list of addresses, and we can actually, you know, link notifications. People can sign up for notifications. Of course, if they don't want to, then we won't actually know who everyone is by default, but we can create systems there.
Right. Can you have recurring proposals in the same way that you have continuous voting? So let's say like, yeah, we've cleaned up this beach and, you know, we're focusing on other ones that are really dirty, going back to that example, but for now, we still wanna pay someone once a week to walk along and make sure, you know, pick up any trash that does accumulate there.
Yeah, you could set that up. Yeah, I mean, it's not in our MVP, but it would be
Right.
basically like system functionality.
I mean, that's just improving the Give DApp, right? So you can have payments.
Yeah.
I just want to say something, I mean, because all these, I mean, okay, conviction voting, the bonding curve is the bonding curve, but you know, the Give DApp is, it has a name, so you know, it's a Give DApp, it's like a very woo, but I would just say in this system, it's like the proposal and accountability machine or engine.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, or considering that for sure.
Yeah, just saying, if we step away from branding, which can be helpful, like, pitch can be either way, but
Yeah, it's a proposal framework is what I've been going with, and also an escrow system. And then also it's analytics as well, right? It kind of like solves all, or it touches all three of those things.
Transparency. It also serves as a very handy backup. It's important that all of this is hosted on Giveth, because even if we start launching these commons, these economies, and you know what, all goes to shit with the bonding curve or conviction voting, turns out, you know, we need to do some more tweaking, it doesn't work. Even if those two components fail, we still have, you know, if this is for Grace Aid or whoever else says, hey, I want to test run this first, you know, trial commons, all of the proposals are still sitting on Giveth. They can still, we kick back to the default, they can get donations, they can get grants. It's not like, you know, we're trying to support a cause and then our system fails and they're SOL. We still have everything kind of backed up on the lower level of Giveth, and even if these components don't work, which we're hoping they will, and of course anything we learn will feed back into our next build, but it's kind of a backup as well. Yeah.
It's like almost 4:40.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump into our launch roadmap quickly, and I don't think that'll take a ton of time, and then a quick chat on our raise, and yeah, that we're gonna work a bit more on that in the future. So we're thinking we're gonna stay lean and agile on this. We have a massive system. We're gonna launch 4 different phases. So the first phase will be focusing just on the bonding curve. We're not gonna worry about conviction voting. We're not gonna worry about connecting Giveth. We're just getting a bonding curve with kind of an off-the-shelf Aragon DAO, 1 token, 1 vote, and start up our first field test commons. Griff has been working a lot on breaking out the budget, the deliverables, and the numbers for those. Our second phase will be including the Giveth DApp. So the DApp will connect with the bonding curve, and again, kind of an off-the-shelf DAO. So second field test commons. Our third phase will be incorporating conviction voting. So this is an entirely new, novel governance process. So that's going to be, you know, there's a lot to kind of wire up in the back end. And then the fourth phase will be launching all of this together in the token engineering commons. Now, of course, there's a bit of fuzziness around this. We're not sure if it's going to be 3 phases or 5 phases or 4 phases. And I mean, budgets and timelines we're still working out, but that's generally the plan. We want to kind of test each component in the wild to see how it fails, so we can iterate on each next phase. That also allows us to ship faster, get more deliverables out, and having you know, more to show the community and investors, and allowing people to take these components and start experimenting with them in their own ways. Once we, you know, launch this first field test, a lot of people can start playing with the bonding curve. Of course, it may not be as straightforward as we think, because the token bonding curve isn't something you can just take and launch. As Gus mentioned before, this all takes so much complex system design, which, I mean, complex system is a specific term for something with many adaptive moving parts, and yeah, ultimately each system will kind of need to be designed through CAD, which is going to be the first industry modeling and simulation tool. I forgot to mention that point, but going back to the token engineering and how this is all based on these rigorous first principles, each system will probably have to go through a system design process, put into CAD. You know, the token bonding curve on its own won't be super helpful for anybody because how that wires into the rest of their system really needs to be thought through before it can just be launched. But that's kind of the point of this as well, is developing the education around token engineering and developing the tools and the skill sets required for this kind of systems thinking so that we can all start building like this. So those are the 4 phases. Any questions about that? Oh, I guess the point of the 4th phase, the Token Engineering Commons, is we are going to launch a system by which we essentially want to create a sustainable funding mechanism for block science and for anyone else who's doing important token engineering research. I've gone around and met a lot of people, and everyone who's doing bleeding edge token bonding curve work is working on like client stuff because there's no money in research. And yet all of these lead researchers are putting out the most impressive stuff in their spare time while working client work to try to pay their families. And we said, well, why don't we combine these things and create an economy around token engineering research that community researchers and experts can pay into, start up this economy, and we can have all these positive feedback loops towards incentivizing research and development of token engineering itself. So kind of a bit of inception there.
So can you like say just one more time
Yeah.
The 4 phases of the launch roadmap?
The 4 phases of the launch roadmap is basically bonding curve in the first one, and it'll be connected with a grayed out DAO and a grayed out DApp. So all of these are necessary components of the commons, but the first phase will just be this.
Yeah, and it'll be its own unique launch. It'll have its own token, right? So we'll launch one token
Yeah.
with the bonding curve.
And that one token that is launched with the bonding curve is focused on token engineering.
No.
No,
Or no?
the 4th phase will be token engineering. When we have everything to put together, that's the token engineering commons.
Okay.
We're gonna let the members of the Common Stack, the people who donate to fund this project, we'll let them decide what the first, second, and third one will be. Maybe
Okay.
the third one will be the Token Engineering Commons.
Cool. So the
But-
first
so
one
we'll
hasn't
do
been
it.
decided.
Did you mention the other ones?
No.
The other ones are not known because
Okay.
the members will, the people who fund us, that fund this effort, they're the ones who will have the ability to hatch, and they're the ones that we would want to decide what the subject of the first field test commons is, because you know they're the ones who will be able to fund it. So, or at least to start it. And
How are
then,
you gonna
of
take
course,
that
it'll be
decision?
open. We're gonna use the memberships. The Common Stack Association is a legal entity that that has a membership requirement. So one membership costs $10,000. If you have 10 memberships, then you get 10 votes. If you donate $5,000 to the Common Stack, then you'll have half a membership, and you'll be combined with someone else who has half a membership, and there'll be one person assigned to that membership. And this is a legal artifact because we live in the legal world, and so there'll be one person assigned to maybe 3 or 4 different people who have partial memberships to vote for that, to decide what the first commons will be.
So imagine that I invest 5,000. Someone will come to me and say like, "Hey, I represent you, and you are 1/2 or 1/4 of a vote," and he will ask me what I vote or not, or will he just
We're
decide?
gonna match people up, and we'll see if, like, in the end, they can do whatever they want. There'll be one person assigned as a delegate for partial memberships, and we're not controlling the governance there. So everyone will know, and they can object to, I don't wanna be matched with that person, right? Like, we will connect people, and they will have to decide for themselves, but in the end, the people who donate to the Common Stack get to decide, and the details of that is
That's still being worked.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
terms and conditions and stuff that we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of, an idea of our launch roadmap. We have specific deliverables and budgets for each. This was something that Zargam, I think, threw out in a call, like maybe this is how we can.
Trent really pushed this.
Trent, yeah. And just having like kind of our funding budgets, you know, if we have, this requires, you know, $1 million, this is $1.5 million, this is 2.5, whatever it may be, but.
Yeah, those numbers are, sadly, as I look at them, they're increasing a little bit.
I'm just putting whatever out there, but
Yeah.
just trying to visualize things differently. So this is our launch roadmap. We have 3 test commons, followed by the token engineering commons. Depending on the amount we raise, that's how far down the roadmap we can get. So that's our launch strategy. And then that kind of ties into our raise strategy. So we are not looking for external investment because we don't want investors who are expecting, you know, 10,000x to come and extract that value from these economies. We're trying to build reasonable, you know, ROI targets for people who are investing and participating in this curve. We also want to make sure that this community is governed by experts, because the people who hold these tokens are going to be the people that are getting to decide through conviction voting eventually the direction of token engineering research. So we want that to be with the people who know the most about it. So we're basically collecting and talking to the leading experts in token engineering, crypto economics, DAO, governance, and giving a lot of them the opportunity to participate in, well, and anybody else who would like to purchase a membership in the Common Stack Association, to be able to raise this as a community for the community, because the more external pressures we have, the more external pressures we have to consider.
And just to say, it's not anybody. It's definitely not, we're not gonna allow anyone to buy these memberships. It's not an open thing, it's just like the hatch phase, because it is eventually a hatch phase for the Token Engineering Commons. We are going to be very exclusive on whose money we take, because that has a lot of influence on how this goes. So it's not gonna be like, you know, the whales from Bitcoin that all they care about is money, blah blah blah. We're not gonna take their funds. We're just not. But we're gonna, you know, start by asking the people who we believe are like experts in these fields of token engineering and decentralized governance, and we'll expand if we have to. But we believe, I mean, we only need to hit the first milestone, which is less than $1 million, and I believe we can get that kind of money from this crew.
And if you like imagine, like I'm Chris, I am not a token bonding specialist, but I really believe and trust in what you guys are doing. Will you allow people with that profile?
So people who are actually working on the Common Stack also get to go on the whitelist, because they are experts in the Common Stack, and they are experts in, they have a special expertise in token engineering. So anyone who actually receives funds from the Common Stack, 15% of what they receive is put, they will be allowed to participate in these commons as well, for that amount. But no, just if you weren't working on the Common Stack, you wouldn't probably be able to buy in. Well, maybe, you know, if you said, hey, I'm an expert on Giveth, right, which is a piece of the Common Stack, then yeah. But if you're just like, hey, I, you know, work at Microsoft and this is cool, unfortunately, no.
That makes sense, but imagine, that's why I give that example. Imagine think of community manager of DAOstack, Pat, that just the person that comes up. I don't know him, but that guy, and you might not know him, and he comes up to you and is like, I really believe in what you guys are doing. And what happens, and has happened before in crypto Twitter, the hype cycle starts. So, wow, humanity DAO and this and that. Suddenly it's going to be all about the Common Stack. It could happen. It would be cool if it happens. And if someone comes, Pat from DAOstack, you don't know him, and he wants to invest 10,000, what do you do? Do you
So let me just say, anyone can donate to the Common Stack Association, but that doesn't mean that they get the benefits of being on the whitelist to participate in the hash sale. So Pat from DAOstack probably would be able to, right? But let me think of something, I don't know, maybe someone who works on a wallet, like Trust Wallet or something, you know, unless they can say that they have some kind of token engineering expertise or governance expertise, we will not accept them as a member, and we won't try to solicit their donation either. I mean, the donation address will be clearly put on the website, but we'll also explicitly say, hey, if you want to apply to be a member of the Common Stack Association, you need to fill out this form, and we will tell you if you are or not accepted.
So those people are on the whitelist, and others you will just tell them you can donate and support us, but you're not getting actually anything.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing is, like, right now, we're still talking about the hatching, the hatching whitelist. So there's essentially, I mean, we are saying that whitelist will be used for all of these curve initializations, but that doesn't mean that Pat from DAOstack couldn't be added here or here or here or in some other Commons initiative that I want to start and include Pat. I mean, the whitelist is not necessarily exclusive. When we're launching it, we can choose to include whoever we want in the whitelist. But if you want to create a Commons doing the exact same thing, including Pat from DAOstack, you can create that and include him in your hatch. So I mean, we're talking not about the overall system operation, just in our initializations of, for example, the token engineering commons.
Yeah, and one of the things we're trying to build is a list of people who are experts in token engineering and decentralized governance and experts in this Common Stack implementation, so that anybody who launches a Commons, they can take this whitelist that we've created, and it will be valuable because they'll know, wow, yeah, these are the people who know best about how this system works. So if I want to make a Commons, 2 years from now about like just some, open hardware, I want to create an open hardware Commons so that we can have open source hardware tools, right? I'm going to want all the open hardware experts, but also I would really appreciate some people who know about token bonding curves, know about conviction voting, know about the DApp, know about the analytics, know about the whole system.
Yeah.
I want those experts too to be invested in this in open hardware, because this is a complicated thing, and we want their expertise in our chat rooms and our things. So that we're trying to create a valuable asset with this whitelist.
A who is who?
Who is who, but also relatively anonymous.
Yeah,
So
without knowing who everybody is, but like, these
Yeah.
guys.
Michael.
So just two things on spreading this idea. One is, one thing that strikes me with all this, and for us it's great going through it in a lot of detail, but it does strike me as complicated. And so I think the communications or the marketing is really vital to this project somehow. Because I'm not sure how much, it really depends on your audience, but I'm not sure how much everybody really needs to know about the intricacies of a bonding curve. They may just want to clean a beach, right? So that's just one point. And then the second point is the business model that you want. So I get it, the first curve that you're launching, you want to make sure that it's really an example almost for what's to come, right? So you want to have good governance around that. But is the business model that this example is so strong that it says now, hey, guess what? You can take this code and you can replicate it and do it yourself, and maybe bring on some of those experts like you were just saying, Griff. Or is it also the business model that this association, kind of a little bit like how block science works today, is sort of like the association is association of experts that will help you, guide you through that process of creating your common stack, and that's sort of the way to also generate revenue for those, like Michael and other people that are involved in this project. So there's two revenue streams. One is they've got revenue as just being early adopters of the technology, and they're members and they're part of the governance. They'll get a return on the sort of investment, so to speak. But the second way is that they're just busy. They're just busy helping people build these common stacks all over the world, doing this model, right? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Right, so I think what I heard from you was we need to, a lot of this stuff needs to be abstracted away, without a doubt.
Yeah.
The question to how much needs to be abstracted away depends, I think, on audience level that we're talking to. So if we're talking to Danny and her trash cleanup community, she does not need to know what a bonding curve is. She does not need to know what conviction voting is. She just needs to know how she interacts with this tool, which I think we can flesh out the user stories a little bit more and just make it very simple how she can, which essentially we're just strapping an economy onto a community. That's all she needs to know. And she interacts with that economy like she interacts with any economy. But that economy is producing more than just bottom dollar value. It's also a value that's aligned with their goals, whether that's trash cleanup or tree planting or whatever else. So that's basically the general audience level.
Yeah.
That's all they need to know. All this stuff goes down to the next layer. So this is like the crypto audience layer. So these are our token engineers who know what bonding curves are. They've played with TCRs. They see the problems with governance mechanisms on chain. They understand why we need conviction voting. That's kind of the crypto audience, and there's even another audience below that, which is like the Michael Zargam level, which is, I mean, we're already abstracting away a lot of detail in these concepts. If you want to drill into math of the token bonding curve, like that's where Zargam lives.
Yeah.
So we've kind of identified these 3 different layers of communication, and how much detail is abstracted out of the explanation depends on which layer you sit in.
Right. Yeah.
How
Sorry.
Lord,
Who's first?
I'm just curious how you want to wrap this up, and if you were trying to wrap up around 5 or.
I am ready to wrap as soon as we're done with questions.
Okay. My question is, because you were on the race strategy, so I saw in the documents there is a thing like if you're on a whitelist, there's this ×4, ×2, and all that crazy stuff that I do not understand anything about. Can you say a few words about that?
Yes, so we are essentially trying to get a raise in earlier than later, so we have multipliers for early investors. I mean, this is kind of a detail on the raise, so if you get in, if you purchase early, you get a 3x multiplier on your contribution weight into the first commons. So it's basically just incentivizing people to get into our sale earlier than later.
And the first commons that will be like the 4th phase, or what counts as the
Each
first
of
commons?
these will be a launched
Okay, so
system.
that's
So
good.
this will be 1 token, 2 tokens, 3 tokens, 4 tokens. So if you put in 10K into the common stack and you put it in right away, then you can put in up to 30K in this. 30K. That's not exact. Those numbers are, we're still playing with them, but essentially we're just trying to get people to purchase their membership early so we know what we can expect.
We will have solidified numbers in a week or so. We just need to like run it all down. It's
And is that multiplier part, or is that a separate thing? Is that part of the math of how you build, like how you have the first hatchers for a token bonding curve? Is it
Yeah.
like, yeah? Okay.
Yep. So if you are in a higher multiplier, you're like if you're in a 2x multiplier, you donate 100 DAI, you'll end up with a number of 200 next to your thing. And then if you go into a 1.5 multiplier and you donate another 100 DAI, you'll end up with 350 as a number next to your 200 from the first time you donated, and 150 for the second time you donated. Right?
Okay.
That'll add to 350, and then now we get into this aspect of like for us, when we launch these commons, we will probably just say, hey, that means 350 DAI. You can put in up to 350 DAI into this commons, and that's it. Otherwise, your transaction will be rejected, right? That's about where we're at. But then we, when someone else wants to use this whitelist for Trash Hero Commons, that 200 probably won't mean 200 DAI. Or sorry, that 350 probably won't mean 350 DAI. But probably maybe it'll mean, maybe they'll say, hey, we only want $1 million total. We're just trying to clean up a beach. Okay, it'd be wild if we got that. That'd be max, right? Mm-hmm. And so since the total whitelist is maybe $7 million or 7 million total numbers, and we're only going to allocate 70,000 total max to the people who are on this experts whitelist. And what we'll do to make this all possible is we'll have a third-party KYC person that people can use, so that they don't actually have to even do anything. Automatically, all these people are KYC'd to their satisfaction, and we can reuse the money that we pay to KYC every individual to like, if someone's like, hey, I do not want people from China, Singapore, or the US to participate in my sale, then because this is often the case for people who want to create a token in their own jurisdiction with a legal entity. Because it's such a common use case, we want to enable people to use this list as much as possible. So we will allow that complete separation.
And the KYC is their data, all their information.
Yeah. Without going down the rabbit hole of the KYC, you want to be on this whitelist because it will be reused for various commons initiatives and hopefully more in the future. So that is our value proposition to members or to, founding members.
Cool.
Any final questions or comments, meeting feedback? What else is on the back here? Outcomes. I will follow up with everyone who's been taking notes on these various docs and hopefully polish up some things. Was there a hand up here? Sorry.
I had two questions. Like, for example, the way the whitelist works. Let's for example, a member enters the community and is whitelisted, and 6 months from now, or 7 months from now, that member, the community decides that that member is actually causing a lot of trouble in the community, and they want to undo their decision because, we live in a world that makes mistakes, right? I mean, we're not perfect. So is there a way to actually, like right now, take care of those situations as a community? Like, for example, we need, we defer from the vision from you, and here's your tokens. The community decided that.
You mean within the Common Stack Association specifically, or any
in that, and also anything on the subdivisions.
So you're saying, can we invalidate someone's tokens?
Not precisely us or a single entity, but the community itself. Is there a way that the community can actually like
vote someone off the island?
Yeah.
Not really. I mean,
not right now.
Well, theoretically, their proposals fail, so they vote themselves out.
Well, so in this first version, there's a few things. Number one, there's only support or don't support. There's no actively against. So you can't vote down someone else's proposal. If they have enough money and tokens to pass a proposal that they like all by themselves, then it will pass. But the other thing is that we're using permissionless tokens, but we are having a permission system from the get-go. So what you could do, and this is a little complicated, but you could launch another commons. You could make the whitelist every token who has tokens in this common. Yeah, you could make the reserve currency this currency, and you could exclude individual addresses that you think. And boom, you have a new commons with it's like a commons on top of a commons. It would be kind of a mess, and who knows how that would work out. But in the end, you can create a new system. You can exclude them from your hatch sale. But if they come in with a bunch of money later, and they start doing things that you don't want them to do, in the end, the system, the time delay in the votes. And the inclusion of time in the votes really allows people to get out, right? Because if you say you vote for something really bad or stupid or wasteful, and you can see, it's gaining power, it's gonna eventually accumulate enough power to go through. Well, they bought all these tokens to actually things, so they have skin in the game, and you can get out of the game. You can sell all your tokens to the bonding curve, which lowers the price of their token, and they get stuck. The people who are doing bad things or stupid things, if it's truly stupid, they'll be in their own DAO at the end with no power.
That makes sense. That's also.
But can I ask a question also?
Just a second question that I had was actually trying to rescue something that Adam mentioned at the first, I think, and it was pretty interesting. The integration of this memberships and the usability of these ones. Is there something like intended for this specific membership amounts or numbers to be used inside the community, like a payment system, or is that not considered at all? Like, how does your value translate into something that you can use on the outside world, as Adam mentioned?
That's defined by the community. We're building the system infrastructure.
Yeah.
When this infrastructure is implemented, the community
Yeah.
has to do a lot of that definition of how value works in their.
Okay, but the only, I mean, the thing is that you have to take out your tokens, and that way you might spend or do whatever you want.
When you sell community tokens back through the bonding curve, you get back that. So you're exiting that.
Oh, okay.
And you pay a small friction fee or tax in that system when you exit.
Yeah.
And that money essentially goes to the
It's
economy.
not like
to make it work.
it's not like Bitcoin or Ethereum. It's a completely different thing. That doesn't have a value.
It does. I mean, this
it has a
token,
value.
if you want to be a Trash Hero token maximalist,
change those tokens.
and I say, listen, I will only work for Trash Hero coin, so you gotta give me Trash Hero coin if you want me to do anything.
Oh, that's
It's a token of value, right? You can do it. But just like that doesn't really happen much with Swarm City tokens or Aragon tokens, probably not gonna happen much with these tokens.
Oh, okay.
This seems to be spurring a lot of awesome discussion that probably could go on offline too, right?
We can continue this in.
Yeah.
Joe, you just
one more
have
question.
questions, even without answers, because we are building up
Yeah.
a few.
A
Yeah.
very short question, but the whitelist is dynamic, right? You're not closing it at one point.
No, it will be closed at one
Oh,
point.
it should be dynamic. Totally. Like, why would it be
The
static?
whitelist gets closed if we hit our cap.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If we get, our cap is gonna be whatever it is, and probably somewhere less than $6 million. And if we hit our cap, the whitelist is closed.
Or you can start.
Because also, or if we ask everyone who we believe is an expert to donate, and, they all donate to their max, then that's it as well, so.
Okay, makes sense. Any closing words, Jeff?
That's all good from my end. If anyone has any last questions that we did not answer, feel free to shout them out. I'll just record them here and we can wrap and chat more.
Any last questions?
Not so much a question, but, well, I guess could be phrased that way. So we're talking the conservation dynamics between value flows.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're talking about 4x of DAI for tokens, can that then be perceived as, and I'm just hopping off Michael's one, of the dirty beach to a clean beach, if those tokens are representing the tokenization of the cleanness on the beach, then we have a dynamic value that we can use instead of a multiplier that avoids the monetary side of DAI for tokens. It can be help where it's the governance aspect.
The multiplier is only for the common stack, it's actually not part of the token bonding commons. It's only for us, so that, because we
It's
need
for
a
a
certain amount of
specific-
money.
I thought we were
to
just,
get
I thought we were
raised.
just asking questions
Yeah,
and
yeah.
not answering them.
For our specific launch. So there's kind of a break here, this is our specific launch, this is the system in general. So I've got your question down here. And we can be sure
Yeah,
to
okay, yeah,
follow
follow
up
that,
offline.
So we're almost,
Do you want
I
me
think we're
to
done.
review upstairs?
Okay, everyone break.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jeff.